Bastards of Babylon podcast. As you can tell, I'm not here with my usual co-host, Bo Cephas. This is going to be a one-on-one interview slash debate. We'll see how it goes with Vela. And the topic of the day is going to be the trans, issue in America and everything that goes along with that. I'm sure we'll get into all the branches of that tree as we get going. Before we get started, I remind everybody you can subscribe to our podcast, The Bastards of Babylon, anywhere you get your podcast. And also, don't forget, football season is coming up soon. And if you're part of the billion-dollar industry that likes to bet on football games, go ahead and go to our Patreon account. That is patreon.com/bet_FGH and follow us there. And it's free to follow, or you can sign up for the premium packages and get and never pay a book again, because, who likes to pay those dirty, dirty bookies when you don't have to? So, Vela, let's jump right into it. First of all, thank you for doing this. Not a lot of people actually have the courage to do stuff like this. I'm sure we'll disagree on certain things, and that's fine, but we'll keep it respectful and just have a conversation and see where it goes. I think the best way to start this would probably be, why don't you tell me your kind of, maybe definition is the wrong word, but just what is your idea of what trans is, and then I'll kind of give mine, and of course they'll be different, and then we can go from there.
Of course. So kind of what I try to do is like with my platform on TikTok, I try to dispel misinformation around the trans community, because I feel like so much media is fear mongering, and people kind of eat up whatever they're told without really checking the facts. And see, I have an interesting perspective, because up until about 5 years ago, I was a very homophobic and transphobic person myself. I grew up in a very religious home and had a very, very strict, kind of view on things, and a pretty hateful view on things. But I've dealt with gender dysphoria since I was about 4 or 5, which is just gender incongruence. And you got to keep in mind, this was in the early 90s, when that wasn't something that was talked about. So there was
I'll let you finish, but you said you had gender dysphoria since the age of 4 and 5. How old are you, can I ask?
33.
You're 33. Okay, so you said the early 90s is when you kind of first started noticing some of these issues. Okay, continue your story. Sorry.
Yeah. So that incongruence was there, but being born in the 90s, there was like nothing, because people will say, oh, the trans debate is just social contagion. Mm-hmm. But then you have to answer the question of like, okay, what about the people who were born in a time when it wasn't talked about, right?
Okay, so without getting into all, because we're going to get into all that as we go, just what is your, like, if you had to define, you're talking with your friends, and one of your friends said, hey, they've never heard of trans. They were dropped from a different planet, and they have no idea what is your idea / definition of what trans is?
I believe I was born wrong.
Okay.
I believe I was kind of born in the prison of a wrong body, and trying to live that way my whole life led to a very depressed and dark life. Like I have 3 children, I have a wife, but I was never present really with them because of the struggle and the battle. So it shut me down for so long. So I've been transitioning for about 3.5 years, and it's the most alive I've ever been. So I would just define it as, like the easy way I explain it is like if you have a puzzle box, right, or like a puzzle, and the pieces on the inside don't match the picture.
Okay.
So I am simply finding the right picture to match the pieces that are on the inside of the box.
Okay. Fair enough. And I'll just, so we can get into it and go from there, I'll tell you kind of my idea of what trans is in today's society. And please don't take any offense to anything I say. It's just for us to have conversation. But and
Understand.
I treat it the way it was always kind of treated. It falls into the to the mental disorder. It fell into the DSM-5 forever up until very recently. It started getting treated differently. So I treat it as, and you kind of touched on it a little bit in your definition, how gender dysphoria, depression, that went along with all these things. So all these things go in congruency with the transgenderism in its current form. So my definition is it stems from something going on mentally, and then like you said, trying to fit puzzle pieces. You're grasping. I'm not saying you, but like the broad you, they're grasping for things to try to get things to make sense. Because when anybody, whether it's a trans person or anybody that's struggling with something, depression, anxiety, you're searching for anything. You're searching. I can remember stories of kids in high school. They're outcast. They're not trans. Maybe they're not even gay, but they're just an outcast. They're like searching for an identity. And in my opinion, the way the trans movement has gone, it's an identity that's protected, so protected that it's comforting. I understand that it's completely comforting to fall into that, and we'll get into the more details about biologically why you feel that way and all that. But like, to me, when you said social contagion, it's for people that aren't necessarily think they're born in the wrong body. It's they can say that, and they go from an outcast to an immediate accepted and protected umbrella under the trans, the pride flag, which has, it's ever growing, and just multiple, anybody and everybody besides straight people can get into the flag. So that's kind of like my, just very short definition of it, and we'll go from there. So I think a good place to start is, I want to go all the way back to when you were 4 and 5, that you said when you first started feeling gender dysphoria, and so I'm assuming you said you have a wife and 3 kids. So obviously I can get from that you were born male. You're a male, and you have, and up until very recently in your late 20s, early 30s, you lived as a man. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So take me back to when you were 4 and 5.
Yeah.
What struck you as making you think you were different?
Like the way I've come to explain, like, childhood identity, right? Because a lot of people try to say that identity is not something that children have, but we all have the building blocks. We all have like even for you, like when you started out, like you had a very simple foundation, and then you started building experiences on it, and that slowly started who you were as a person.
Sure.
Well, for somebody who's born with gender dysphoria like I didn't have a base. So I had these experiences, but I didn't have anything for them to hold them together. So the only way I learned how to kind of blend in was I started copying what I saw from other boys or men around me, because there was so little that was, like, all of my mannerisms and stuff were very feminine. Right. And I would fall out on it. So I had to learn how to kind of like blend in.
Did you have a mother and a father in the home?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
And that first memory I had was like, I remember, back in the day we played Cowboys and Indians, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of politically correct now, but
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Played Cowboys and Indians, and my mom lent me her makeup for, like, the Indian war paint.
Okay, yeah.
And my first memory was, after I got done with it, I had that curiosity and that desire to put it on like Mom did. You know what I mean? And I also understood right at that moment that what I felt was not going to be okay with the rest of my family. So I've had this very, very difficult road of being born in a very religious family, mm-hmm. whose whose love always felt very conditional in the sense of like, as long as you stay kind of within these certain bounds, that love will be offered.
Okay.
So I had this understanding about myself, but it was an understanding I didn't want to have. And I fought it from 4 or 5 to 29. I dealt with those feelings. I dealt with, those desires, and it was like, it was eating me up inside.
Did you have any, besides just wanting to put on makeup and maybe like a hair wig or something like that, like, did you ever have homosexual tendency? Like, did you ever fantasize about men?
No, because even now I don't like men in
Okay,
that
so
way.
you like women completely.
And I've had someone say like, well, why'd you transition then? I was like, well, I don't, you don't transition for men. Like, it's not just to be an object of desire. Like, you do it so you feel at home in your own body. I think we need to get out of this mindset of like, oh, I do this for objectification or whatever else, and like, I think we need to bring the trans debate more to a human level instead of this kind of like, this big movement. Like, look at the human stories that are happening and that revolve around it.
You've never liked me. So I wouldn't say like, well, why'd you do it? But my question would be, what would be wrong if you were just an effeminate male? That you were just a male that had some effeminate leanings, which is fine. There's metrosexuals. There's even like more than metros. I mean, the spectrum goes all the way to gay men, and which obviously you never went that far. But why couldn't you just be a feminine man who liked women, which you do, started a family, and you're just a little bit effeminate, which is fine.
I've had that question before too, and it's I wanted nothing to do with being an effeminate man. I was like,
why not?
It was all compartmentalization. Like, if I was going to be seen as a man, I wanted to be seen as like the manliest man. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be seen as like, because I had been called like gay and like faggy and things like that throughout my whole life.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that feeling. And it also was, because even my wife at a time asked me that, but she was like, well, what if we just try to kind of change your fashion sense, things like that. And I was like even back to puberty, when I started like developing like more masculine characteristics, it felt like, okay, this isn't right, kind of in the same way, like, I'm sure in your situation when puberty started happening, you were like, okay, we're getting somewhere now. Like, for me, I was like, no, this needs to, like, it wasn't a good thing.
No, I don't think anybody likes puberty. Like, puberty is awful for everybody, but I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like, that it's like, oh, this is the next step.
Yeah.
Like, that was not an exciting idea to me at all. That actually was more like, okay, all right, I'm stuck in this now, and so yeah, I never wanted to be an effeminate man. Like,
so
it's about,
other than the makeup and like you said, you mentioned depression when you were younger. What did that stem from? Did that stem from anything besides, at a young age? Because you probably couldn't grapple with the fact that, you think you're born in the wrong body. You're way too young for that. So where did the depression come from, you think, at that very young age?
just like you talked about not fitting, right? Like, and I kind of wanted to kind of piggyback on that, where I know this is not really the topic that we are at right now, but
no, it's fun.
Brought it up. When you say that trans people have a lot of protections,
mm-hmm.
The reality to an individual trans person is we are part of a leper community now. Like, there might be a flag out there that shows the pride of our community, but the reality is most of your family leaves you. Most of your friends want nothing to do with you. It's literally an exchange. Like, you're exchanging inner happiness for loss. It's like there's so little that you gain from it in like a way that people can understand. And instead you lose a lot, but you gain yourself. Like you finally take control of your own life. Like this is the first time I feel like I've lived, you know what I mean? And not that life has just happened to me. But that was one thing I thought when I transitioned. I was like, oh, I'm going to have this huge community around me. But the fact is a lot of trans people, we're kind of islands. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with how we're treated by society. We are kind of treated like modern day lepers.
Do you think so? Even in today's society?
Yeah, because think about it. Like society is very binary, right? You got man, you got woman, and then you have cliques within man and cliques within woman. But like simply just trying to be accepted in women's circles at all as a trans person, a trans woman is very difficult because they see you as kind of an intruder or an outsider. When in reality, for me, I just want to find a place. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, I don't know if you've heard of polylichens, but you're talking about protections. Have you heard about polylichens?
No. What is that?
Okay. If you look up polylichens, she was a 14-year-old trans girl who was lured out to a park by a 29-year-old supposedly gay man who killed her and then dismembered her body and left it to be found.
What do you mean lured? What does that mean, lured out?
Like
lured. Oh, lured. Okay.
Lured to the park, and this person killed her and then dismembered her and left her body there.
And she was 14?
She was 14, but she was a trans girl. So there's been a lot of violence. And
but that's a crime. Like, I mean, that's whether she was trans or whatever. There's horrible people out there that do horrible things to all kinds of little people. So like that's obviously that's awful.
But there is a thing in the trans community where you are dehumanized. Even in my own family, I no longer like not my family, my wife and kids, but my like mom, brothers, like that kind of family. My brothers don't view my opinions as anything to respect anymore. Because they think I've they think I'm either like demonically possessed or, whatever. Like, I've lost all classification of just being human, of the fact that I've lived all these years and like I've had experiences and my experiences are valid, and
so let me just say this, because like you seem like a very level-minded person, not the type of person that would, like the screaming people on the streets and all that. So, I have sympathy for you and your situation and your story. I'm sorry that your family, if they disown you or whatever, like, to me, like family is, I would always want to like, just, help you because like, whether you accept it or not, whether you agree that you think you need help out as a family member, I would always want to help you and be there for you. So I have sympathy for that, on you for that. But, like you're an adult. So like adults doing things, I think it is a topic and we could get into that, but it's not really the focus that let's take it to now like children, because, that's the real big problem. So like, what do you say to the people who, that would, let's assume you went to a pride parade and all the people there that are saying, yeah, we need to start, because you say you lost some of your childhood, the argument for them would be, well, that's why we got to start these puberty blockers early. That's why we got to start these surgeries early so they can feel more like themselves at a very young age. So like, again, there's two kind of levels to this. There's the adult person that wants to do what they want to do with their own body. I can have sympathy for that. I can have a conversation with them about that. But the kids, now let's take it to like underage kids. What's your feelings on that?
So first I want to get kind of the facts straight about what happens with trans kids. Because again, the media is all about like, they would have you believe that surgery is happening to 6-year-old children. The reality is most of gender affirming care for children is social transition, maybe a name change, maybe wearing different clothing, a lot of doctoring, a lot of therapy, a lot of kind of partnering with the physician and the parents to kind of plan out.
And these plans always end with chemical, castration and then surgery. Like I understand, yes, it starts with consultation, very rapidly moves into, because that's where the money's at. The doctors get paid for the surgeries, not for therapy. Like, so yes, I agree that that's how it starts, and that's a good picture to paint. But as we've seen, this is a very rapidly moving thing to the chemical castration, which takes, drugs, pharma. They get paid for the drugs. The doctors get paid for the surgery. So yes, I agree. It starts with therapy, but it's a very rapidly moving thing to the ultimate trans. Because like, really, how can you make the argument? It's hard to make the argument that we should talk to them about changing their name and change this, but not ultimately change it. Like, make the argument that you shouldn't ultimately change them at the youngest age. Like, if you agree that they're in the wrong body, make the argument that we shouldn't chop them up at 6 years old. What's the argument against it? If you really believe they're in the wrong body, why wouldn't you?
Well, see, I don't get to say who is in the wrong body and who isn't.
But if a 6-year-old goes to the doctor and the parents are going along and they're just going along with it, and 6-year-old says, hey, let's say 6-year-old boy says, hey, I'm a girl. I've always felt like a girl for like the 3 years that I have a memory, and I want to be a girl. Why? According to the way that the messaging is for the trans movement, why wouldn't the doctor just say, okay, oh my gosh, immediately, let's get you in, let's start it right now?
I'm sorry, could you add?
Just at the youngest age, what's the argument against? I mean, obviously I'm against it. I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here. What's the argument against it if you believe in trans and being born in the wrong body? Why wouldn't you start it as early as possible? All the way to surgery.
Well, so much of the trans journey is a journey. It's
leading to what?
That really depends on the person. There are even some people in the trans community who don't get surgeries. They,
because of money?
Well, some of it's money and some of it's they're happy as they are. Like,
So wouldn't that be like, okay, just a quick question. Like, if you don't get the surgery, isn't that just drag? Am I wrong?
No, because drag is performative.
Okay.
Like, drag is kind of caricature of
women, yeah.
Meant to be just kind of like this flamboyant, over the top.
I agree. A horrible sexual caricature of a woman that should never be performed in front of kids. Like, that's.
But whereas, like the trans experience is one that's rooted in a more genuine quality of just almost like quieter moments. And I know you don't think they're quieter because of the parades and things, but I think if there was less pushback, you wouldn't see such verbose parades. Like if it was a quieter thing. But I honestly think a lot of the parades and things are in response to the pushback. You know what I mean? Like how if somebody's like, oh, you can't do this, and they're like, well, I'm going to do this even extra now because you said I can't. Like,
So you think that like guys walking down the street with their dangs flopping around is just because they want to show us? Like, we'll show you.
No, but like, yeah, I even agree that pride is pretty sexualized.
It's very sexualized.
I don't really. That's definitely not what I like. If I go to a pride parade, it's very minimal. I'm not out carrying.
So let me ask you: do you take your kids to the pride parade?
Yeah, so like a local one.
And how do you feel about if like a group of people naked, maybe they got their dicks out, maybe they don't, maybe there's naked women? How do you feel about them seeing that?
Well, then I absolutely would shield them because children should be shielded. What I want you to think about is like the classification of someone who's gay or trans or whatever if they're a bad person, it doesn't matter if they're gay or trans. Like, you can still be a bad person and be trans.
Okay, but let me just tell you, I wish there were more people like you that were vocal on this, because I bet you if you said that in some sort of like, you know, trans, you know, blog or just, you know, online, I have a feeling you would get kind of ridiculed by the trans community, like saying like, well, how dare you say that we shouldn't I love hearing you say that, because that's more towards normalcy. That's really all the pushback that you're getting from most of the other side is like, okay, it's one conversation to have what adults do with their bodies. Set that aside. Can we just keep it away from the kids? Is that okay? I think that's, and you know, I'm glad to hear that you would that you say that, but I honestly do think you are in the minority of your particular group on the, you know, the trans side of that mindset. I really do.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I spend some of my platform too, like, calling out other trans creators who.
How's that go over?
You know, but I call them out because I'm like, you are using your platform to kind of sail all of us down the river. Like, you're either rage baiting for views and things like that. And what I don't think people understand, you know, with the trans community is when one trans person speaks, like, they speak for the whole community in the sense of, like, if you do something wrong, like something is horrible, that is going to be seen as like, oh, people, that's what they do. Or like, if something is over sexualized and it's in the media, they're like, see, look, danger. And the thing is the most detrimental thing that media has done to the trans community is compare us to pedophiles. We are not pedophiles. We are not dangerous with children. But see, this is where I'm trying to show you the human side of a trans person, and like remove from the media and like that.
I see the human side of you. I don't I mean, you'd have to show me stats on pedophilia, because like it's, you know, it seems to be more prevalent in that community. Now you can say it's more prevalent in like the, you know, preachers and all and stuff like that, and you got it, and that's fine. But like, the why is there such attention on the kids? I have my own opinion on this, but what's your opinion on why is there such a focus on grabbing the youth, getting them used to this, or whatever the case may be? Why is there such a focus on the youth and getting them comfortable with the trans movement? I mean, obviously I would use the word grooming, but what's your views on that?
I think I've talked about this too before, that I think there's a way to prepare kids for the world as it is today without being descriptive. Meaning, very early on, you could say, hey, we just want you to know that not everybody looks the same, and you know, like, these very kind of vague descriptions, like, but regardless, we still treat people with kindness and, you know, and worth. So I'm in the same camp of thinking that kids are taught religion too early, because I think it molds the mindset in the same way that, like, what you would say is if you teach a kid about a trans reality.
Yeah, we could do an hour on that, because, like, you know, kids, you have to mold kids into something. So like, it's not like, are we going to mold kids and get them to believe in it? We all mold into something. So then the argument is, what do we mold them into? Do we mold them into, you know, whether it's religion based, education based, you know, there's good things you can mold them into and bad things you can mold them into.
I think empathy and sympathy based, you know, like
that's not really like an, you know, that's not really a culture. That's just a trait that you can teach any kid, no matter what the bigger picture might be.
but if you can create a mindset, because I've even seen it in my kids' school, where they're a lot more accepting and things, and they're not brainwashed or anything. It's just like, I think about being a trans parent. If I was walking around in the 90s going to school functions and things, like I probably wouldn't have even hardly been allowed. It's like there's just like more acceptance and more understanding from people. And I think that points to empathy and sympathy. And I know that's not a culture, but I think that is an important aspect of just the human condition, right? That like we focus on what I want people to understand is that, we need to stop looking at the world through only our own view. Like in the sense that like your experience of the world is completely different than mine, but we also do share convergence points in the fact that we've had a lot of the same viewpoints for a long time. And I understand what that feels like. Like I understand, for me, for the longest time, I kind of knew I was part of the trans community, but I didn't want to be a part of it. And I felt like people who did transition were weak and just gave in. I was like, it doesn't matter if I'm fighting it. Like, as long as I keep fighting it, I'm, it's honorable. And like, I had these completely very, just kind of hateful opinions. And I didn't want to be a part of the trans community because I knew I always was. And I was always kind of wrestling with the indoctrination I'd been brought up on and everything else. But I've learned a lot of empathy and sympathy in 3.5 years. And I am definitely a better person now than I was.
Well, I think that we're honestly just scratching the surface. I hate that we've got time running out. If it's okay with you, I would love to be. This could be like part one. Maybe we can bring you back to do more shows and get it, because like there's literally, I've wrote down 4 things that we didn't get into that you said that I wanted to get deeper on. So like let's maybe do this again. I really enjoyed having your perspective on things. I like your calm demeanor. I like the way you openly think. We disagree on some things, but at least you're willing to talk about it. If we do do different parts, maybe if maybe someone that thinks more radically, like maybe it's an acquaintance, maybe it's just someone that you can connect with that in your groups that does think you should just go full force with the kids and all that stuff. Love to have them on too. Maybe we could do like a whole panel type situation. But thanks for doing this. Is there anything you want to plug before we let you go? Like any kind of social media spots or anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody does want to follow me, I'm on TikTok, Vela.k. And I don't know, I will continue to try to speak up for the trans community in ways that are relatable to all walks of life.